So LBJ, he was a slick one, wasn't he?
He was. My granddad said that he's one of the meanest people that he had ever met, and he was fascinated with him. Typically, it's kind of like you see these billionaires these days, and they control the politicians. Well, LBJ controlled everybody, whether it was the senators, the congressmen, his donors. He had a fascinating way of controlling people, and it was in part based on his relationship with J. Edgar Hoover. And then they would get dirt on people, and he was not afraid to use it for his benefit. There was no shame in it. And then he was a little bit heavy handed to where if they got out of line and that didn't work, then they often died very mysteriously. So my granddad,
Yeah, it
you know,
was
he,
like kind of what, I mean, in a way, it's kind of what, how close to, I mean, this is an opinion, but it's kind of exactly like Biden, but Biden was not good at it.
to some degree, I mean, poor Biden. I think Biden was controlled, but perhaps by some level of deep state, and honestly think that was a test of the American people to see how far they could get and what they could get away with.
I do
And
too, bingo.
I mean, I'm still concerned about a lot of the stuff that was signed after he was ruled incapable of running for president.
Mm-hmm.
How is he still capable of signing all of these executive orders? How is he capable of 8,000 folks that he's doing pardons for? Like, you can't be incompetent, but then make huge decisions that impact all of us.
Huge decisions that are clearly incompetent and immoral. But anyway, back to the granddaddy of the Democrat Party. He was the granddaddy, wasn't he? Well, after he, let's just go to it. Your granddaddy, he he knew they were coming for him, and they were going to pin all this government, uh, what do you call it, agricultural scandal on him. So he made himself an insurance tape, right? Is that what can we say before we introduce this tape? He made himself an insurance policy, which is a tape recording. Is that right?
So, to some degree, it's partially accurate. There are other tapes, which I do not have, but there are other tapes that were done before and during the whole trial, which happened, I believe, is in early '60s. So, yeah, probably 1961, somewhere in that time frame is when the trial began, and ultimately the Kennedys were coming after LBJ, but to get to LBJ, they were going after his network. So there are supposedly tapes from around that time frame, and Fossil, I don't want to talk too much on that, but
Okay.
this tape was recorded more around 1971 because my granddad had recently gotten out of jail or prison, and then Cliff Carter, who he's talking to, who was, I mean, LBJ's right hand man. We can go on, listen to his voice, go to Spartacus Educational. That's what I first did. Is I tried to verify this Cliff Carter voice, and you can hear it time and time again. So this was, I think, more of an insurance policy that he wasn't going to get killed.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I
once he
mean.
got out of prison, because supposedly, one little family story, I didn't share this on Alex's show, is Bobby Kennedy, once my granddad was in prison, going to prison, once it was over, there are three people that were indicted. Two of them died very mysteriously, but my granddad lived. Perhaps it's because of the tapes. Perhaps it's because he had given Lyndon $10 million. And supposedly, Lyndon had said, get Billy Saul off at all costs, but you can't incriminate me in order to do it. And that was the sticking point. It would have brought Lyndon in order to get my granddad off, to show that, no, this was, open deal that a lot of people knew about. So he, recorded that tape. But then once Bobby came to him and said, look, we'll get you out of jail and we'll get you off of this, but you have to turn evidence on LBJ. He said, the minute I get out of here, turn evidence, I'm going to be dead. It's like, I will not do it. My life and my family's life is too important, and so I can't.
Wow.
So he didn't. He would have helped them had he thought that they could protect him and his family, but he knew the level of corruption and power that LBJ held and what he was willing to do to keep it, and so he wasn't willing to share it. He did
And
later.
it was about, Jake, you know this so well. It was about a Texas agriculture. Jake, go into that now.
Well, I mean, I just want. That's why I asked you, Shane. Like, what exactly was your grandfather indicted for and arrested for? Because it sounds to me like he was doing deals with Johnson. It was kickback stuff. I don't know what of it's. How is it different than anything happening in government today? Is my first question.
Well, so it's not a lot different. In
Right.
all fairness, sadly, even here in Texas, the tab to pay to play is a minimum of $250,000.
Right.
And then you get big state contracts. And I was told that firsthand, and it's a sad state. I wish we were in a better place, but that's what you got to do. Back then, and I think that goes through PACs. You donate it to a PAC, and then they put the money in. But back then, it was delivered a lot of times in briefcases to Lyndon Johnson.
Right.
So there were two scandals. I mean, there were some others that had happened. So, for example, there was like a bunch of little houses that were on a lake that used to be some type of government Boy Scout camp, something along those lines. Well, LBJ flipped that to my granddad, and he bought it for, say, $1,500 a house, and then put about $500,000 into them, and then sold them for $7,000 or $8,000. But he'd have to pony up to the right people after the fact. And these two that were way bigger, one was cotton allotments, and that's a really fun story. And then the other one, which he's more well known for, is anhydrous ammonia, and really the storage tanks that you could put them in. And so I'm happy to share the details of what was going on if you all want to go into that much depth.
I wanted to know about the cotton stuff. That the agricultural stuff always fascinates me because, I farm in Hawaii, so I was wondering about all that, how crooked they are with their farm stuff.
Well, it sounds like a pay-for-play scheme. It sounds like the mafia. That's what it is. Even though it was Johnson and the Democrats, that's what it is, right?
It's a protection racket or what?
Well, so back then, if I understand it properly, and again, I'm not a historical expert, but this is what I know, and I'm happy to be corrected. But there were cotton allotments, and generally, depending on how much land you had or when they were given, you could only have so many cotton allotments, so much acreage per se. So maybe this guy has 2,000 acres worth, and this guy has 5,000 acres worth, but whatever you got, you got. Well, Saul, he was trying to expand his empire out in Pecos, Texas, and he wanted larger acreage tracts, more cotton allotments. And this is where it becomes a little bit of a scheme, and he would go to these farmers and say, look, I want to sell you some of my land, and you can then transfer your cotton allotment onto that land. But then I'm going to lease it from you for more than what the payments would be for the land. But you're going to default on your first payment for that land, and that comes 1 year after we sign our documents. And per our agreement here, it basically says once you default, the land comes to me. And
Gotcha.
So also the cotton allotment comes to me. So the farmer is making a big chunk of money off of not really having to do anything. And then my granddad, as an insurance policy on his side, he would basically take these long strips of land, and that's what he was selling to these farmers. So that way, even if they did try and default on it, there's no way they could go out and farm these long, narrow strips of land.
Gotcha. Okay, it's like BlackRock buying up
Right.
land. So he goes.
Yeah, what was a cotton allotment, though? What was that? That was a government contract, right?
No, it just gave you the right to farm the land, and then I think the government would pay the land, or maybe
it's a government contract. It's a government. It's like
a subsidy.
It's a subsidy.
There you go. So something, maybe, yeah, exactly. Maybe it was a subsidy. Maybe it gave you rights to farm the land, but either way, you're making money off of it for
Well, it
sure.
gave the government a hook into stealing your land from you.
Right.
That's what it was.
Right.
It's all a Ponzi scheme of the government taking our tax money to steal our own shit from us and kill us too. But anyways,
So you see.